and just say, okay, Cedric, welcome back. Bonello's back. Bonello, Nat is back. Who else is back? Bell is back. Good. Who else is back? Okay, we won't waste time, eh? Just trying to avoid for us going over time. Okay. So let's actually dive into it because Bonello is back. As Bonello, good to see you in class. That's good. So let's dive into it. So because Mandisa, good to see you. Good in class. Okay, let me share my screen. So because normally we'll go through this, we would have gone through the second, we would have started off with the second part of Dr. Darton's lecture. There she goes into more detail where she operationalizes UDL, practical tips and things like that. Yeah, so which is equally important. But that video is about 44 minutes long, and we only have about an hour. So my fear is that we might not get to Amani's lecture. So Amani's lecture is not long; it's about 12 to 13, about 12 minutes. So let's start with that first, the coloniality, so they can think around it. And if we have any discussion, we have it. And if you have questions for Thursday, because he's going to come join us on Thursday in the second part of Thursday. So from this part, 5 p.m. The first part will complete whatever we need to do with UDL, and then we'll go into decoloniality. So let's go into decoloniality. And really, this links to first semester again. If you remember, excuse me, if you remember, the exam you had for disability as diversity was around models of disability within an African context. So it's talking about how do we from Africa conceptualize disability, okay? But what was the impact of coloniality, and how did it affect, or how has it affected, or how does it continue to affect the way we think around disability within an African context? Okay, all right. So let's get to this.
So the colonial.
Oops. I'm trying to find my slider. Okay, like that is. All right, so we'll start now.
So the colonial thinking is a very interesting topic and a very interesting theory and concept that can really help us understand, deeply understand what is happening in the community, in almost all the spheres in the community, or in formerly colonized contexts. So I start by exploring what is all this decoloniality. So of course the coloniality is doing away with colonialism. D is like D comes from doing away, or like there's construction and deconstruction. If you are deconstructing, it means you are like doing away with what has been constructed. So here it's like demystifying. We wanna not really demystifying, but we wanna reanalyze. We wanna remove this power that has been exerted by colonialism. So I start by saying colonialism dehumanizes the colonized. Colonialism makes the colonized be like sometimes considered as animals. They're not human. Yeah, they have no agency. They're there they're worthy exploitation. They're worthy to be exploited. They're worthy to only benefit the colonizer, but they might not have a right to benefit themselves. That's how colonialism works. And I think we have several examples of colonialism in Africa. I think Africa only like 2 countries. I think Somalia, I think Ethiopia and Liberia. were not colonized, but the rest of Africa was colonized. And I think South Africa is just the other day that it came out. So it came out of colonialism. So this is a real thing. Yeah. So there's need to identify the oppression that is brought by colonialism and to resist it so that we can get sustainable transformation. And importantly, we need so that we can affirm the humanity of the colonized. You could have heard about the story of Sarah Bachman. Sarah Bachman, yes. The lady who was taken from South Africa and taken to Europe, and she was used as in a freak show. So they were viewing her as an ape, like her body features were considered abnormal because the color and the body features, they were considered the small. They said she had small ears and a big behind, which was not the norm in Europe. So they even there was even a term for maybe the big. There was a term for the big behind. They found a medical term that described the big behind as a disease. And the small ears and other features were like, she's more of an ape than a human being. So she was exploited. She was used, put like in a zoo. People come and do all sorts of mad things to her. Yeah, so that's what we talk about, dehumanizing. Yeah, so there's need to resist such oppression so that we can assert the humanity of the colonized people. And there's need to, and after we assert, we need to bring sustainable transformation, because such transformation will consider the colonized, will come from the colonized. They will own it, and it will be speaking to their needs, the immediate needs, not the needs of the colonizer. So these issues of being exploited by the colonizer will be addressed, because there's a saying, or there's some thinking that no knowledge is free. No knowledge is neutral. All knowledge has a bias. You are told something, or you are given something, so that to benefit the one who gives you the knowledge has some interest in that. So you as the colonized should be able to make your own knowledge, so that you shun being exploited. So we go with the next point there. I'm talking about how colonialism considered Africa as primitive, barbaric, and dangerous, and diseased. That's how Africa was dismissed. See, Africa was taught as not having history. When colonialists came, it was like Africa. They have discovered Africa. That's why we say, like you will hear some lakes still called some names that are not African. They were renamed, given some European names. Yeah, because of this view that history started with the arrival of the colonialists. So does it mean that the people who are living here before the arrival of colonialists, does it mean they were not human? Does it mean they couldn't think? They couldn't relate with the environment? They didn't have a life. So it's of course we need to appreciate this how colonialism has shaped the world, has kind of made silence the voices of the colonized. I go to the next point. When we turn to specific issues of disability, there is evidence that African communities understood disability differently from the ideas of the West. There are instances where Africa constructed disability differently, like how we think about disability now is not always how it has been. It has a lot of colonial influences. Yeah. Disabled people, the example, I'm just giving examples of how disability was constructed differently in Africa. Disabled people were accepted and given visible roles in society, such as being considered as gods in ancient African civilization of Kemet. Kemet, that is Egypt, as well as in Yoruba folklore. Like they were actually, disabled people were raised with that high status of their gods. They are not a charity case. They actually have a god status. In Botswana, or historical Botswana, being blind or having mobility challenges was not considered to be a disability, but was viewed as normal and was associated with increased spiritual insight and other powers. That's another example. And in Zimbabwe, there are the people called Vadoma who have a condition that is medically called ectrodactyl, which makes them miss 3 middle toes and the outer ones tiny. And these people, they regard themselves with pride, even forbidding their members from marrying outside the tribe. So we are saying they don't consider it as a disability or a deformity. It's kind of a source of pride. So this is another example where a disability is how Africa considered disability was kind of different. Oh yes, they use other parameters to view disability. So using these examples, it could mean that disabled people were integrated in daily life activities in Africa to some extent. Yeah. So even with those examples that I've given, it doesn't mean that Africa, pre-colonial Africa was perfect. There were other instances where disability was seen as a problem, and where the reaction wasn't good, or the treatment wasn't good. So an example is the Igbo of Nigeria, where although they were unfamiliar with deformity of shape, they viewed being brown skin, or what I call towny, or a kind of a whiteness, as deformed, because it was different from what was prevailing, like the black beauty. You know, everyone was black, and black was considered beautiful. And then all of a sudden, a very brown or tawny child comes. He or she was considered as a deformed. See, that was a kind of disability, how disability was formed. And then there were also in Nigeria, there were cases of twin killings. When you give birth to twins, they are considered an abnormality, and they will actually be killed. And we also have cases, sometimes we have cases of ritual killing in some African countries, especially targeting people with albinism. And also we have disabled children, cases where disabled children were hidden by the family from the public and even killed. So what are we saying here? We are just saying that African indigenous values and practices should not be idealized. They should not be idealized, but they should be pursued critically so as to resist any reproduction of exclusionary and oppressive African narratives towards disabled people. So we are saying there are things to learn from the past. Past had its positives, like pre-colonial Africa had its positives, but it also had its negatives. So we should do a balancing act. We should be critical. Our adoption of these indigenous knowledges, indigenous philosophies should be critical. It shouldn't be just blanket.
Okay. Thoughts? What jumped out at you? What connections did you make? Oof, no space. Anybody wants to share? Anyway, let me leave it. Let me just hear what people want to say. In what ways do you think coloniality has shaped what we know about disability? A lot? Minimal? Not at all? Or is not something you've thought about?
I think we touched on this with Dr. Adel Ibrahim. She mentioned three of power. Yeah.
Okay.
In my opinion, it's yeah, we were colonized with a can I say with a medical view of thinking of disability, with a yeah, the global north, that thinking was brought to the global south, and that's the reason why the way we think today is because of the global north.
Okay.
I can call it their customs, the way we were socialized by the global north.
Okay, thanks very much. In many ways, yes, but as you heard from Amani, he also conscious about that because there were other ways of views of disability from the African context that is similar and maybe also different, but which were exclusionary also. Okay, Masabata, go ahead. After Masabata, then I'll ask Unati if there's anything to say. Masabata, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Ike. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I think listening to the presentation, I can relate in both ways in terms of how, as African, we view the issue of disability. I'm thinking around the issue that he just mentioned with regard to the albinism, where they are being kidnapped and killed for ritual purposes, which is still the case today. And now coming to the medical model of how we view disability, something happened over on Friday, which then said to me, we are still having a long way to go in terms of changing the mindset with regard to how we understand the issue of disability. I attended a Nelson Mandela Day in one of the disability centers, and a group of elderly ladies from the church, they came to pray for the sick, the children who are at the center. So one of them was from the medical sector. I think she's a nurse. Her comment also was, she was saying she's somehow angry to see these kids like this because it's the effects of the medication or effects of how the hospital treated them. But more than anything, it's how they referred to them as the sick children every time. And they were like, when they were praying. So then it said to me, we still have a long way in terms of being conscious as the community to understand the issue of disability. So, yeah.
Thank you. So that's why, I think, first part of the lecture, I said our society is still ruled by the medical view of disability. medical model view of disability. Yeah, I won't. Let me not say more now. Let me just see if Nati wants to add, or say anything.
Well, I want to concur with is it Masabata who just spoke now on what was going on, but also to say Cedric is saying that the medical model of disability has somewhat colonized our thinking about disability. And I want to partly agree and also disagree at the same time to say I don't think that our African perspective has been developed in this regard in such a way that we are able to also lift the African opinion of disability, because there is an African indigenous knowledge and perception of disability. It's just not recorded anywhere. It's not taught in schools because of the sifting of information or the colonizing of information. I'm thinking from where I come from in a rural setting, it's not everybody or it's not every disability that is taken as taboo. Some disabilities are taken as a blessing and people welcome them. But it's just that those views and those opinions are not recorded anywhere in literature. And I think it is our work as academics and as people who work in this field to write about these stories and bring this information so that it can compete with the Western views of medical science and medical view of disability. And in that way, we will be contributing towards the decolonization. We do agree that we have been colonized in terms of information, but still that information is not absolute nonsense, if I can put it like that. It has been useful, but to a certain extent, and it is useful where there are certain resources that are available. And therefore, again, there's no right or wrong answer in this thing, but we just need to think about what we know as Africans and maybe try to protest and lift that information that it is not all bad. It is not as bad as people portray it to be. And again, if we look at religion has decolonized people, yes. And I want to pick up on what Masabata is saying, that people will say people who are having disabilities, it's because of their wrongdoings, it's because they are cursed, it's because they are demon possessed and this and that. At the same time, you find the same religious African people who will have a different opinion or an opposing opinion about that. But what I want to say on this debate, on this discussion is that when we think about decolonizing information, let us think about what we can do in our little corners to change perceptions, because it's the only way we can push the agenda. Let us be vocal and let us try and give a chance to people who have got a different opinion, because what is problematic about the medical view is that it has been researched and tested, and people want to believe that which has been tested and has been used as gold standard. And this, which is not tested, is always regarded as something that's not important and something that is a myth, and yet there is a different truth, and we need to dig onto that different truth. And when we are dealing with this, even in schools, we need to open channels of information sharing so that the African view is also enshrined in the whole process. Yeah, that's what would be my input in the thinking around
this thing. And Ike, if maybe I can pick up on the UDL
Yes.
that
Please.
we talked about previously.
Mhm.
Just to say, initially when everybody was sensitized around disability, the main issue was access to physical access to structures, and disability then referred mainly to what people could see and touch, the physical disability. And now, after that awareness was done and the buildings were changed and accessibility even in schools was done, then the next level was to look at the content now of the teaching, and that breaking of barriers inside the classroom and inside the curriculum now called for this UDL. And if we're linking this UDL to the decolonization that we are talking about, maybe we should think about including these African views as part of our UDL, as part of the content. I don't know how can I break this down, but as part of curriculum and as part of activities and participation in classrooms, we need to open up space for African people to express themselves and to really take this knowledge and information and incorporate it or present it in platforms that will make it acceptable for teaching.
Wow, Nati, you've kind of almost like developed a whole new lecture. A whole new lecture on this topic.
Sorry for that.
No. Very,
Sorry, but it's my mind trying to link this and trying to pull this to say, yes, we've been
Yes.
decolonized, but now we've been colonized, but as a way of colonizing, EUDL is giving us a platform, is giving us an opportunity to actually draw from the resources that we have and to say, look, this works for us, this works in this context. And maybe in that way, we could have ways of proving what does not work for us. And in that way, we will be decolonizing the whole agenda. And yeah.
Very true. Thank you. Very true. No, I thank you very much for this contribution, because I mean, what will convince people, just like you're saying, is evidence. And just like you said, the medical model has been researched, has been tested, so there's evidence. So if you want to now convince people that, you know what, your way of knowing, your way of being is also valid, where's the evidence to that? And what Nati said is very, very true. Part of the biggest challenge we have. So you finishing off this degree is not just for you to get the degree. Like I told you, we are the ones to help do the documentation that Nati was talking about. Documentation of how Africans view disability. Why do I say so? Dr. Nombo from Stellenbosch University, she was the one, because she did research on the Amabomvana tribe in South Africa, were able to find out that they actually have a different view of the ethics of care. So ethics of care was brought, is another way of viewing disability, where we look at the relational part of engagement in disability. But the Amabomvana tribe already had it. They looked at it in terms of, disability in terms of, through the lens of spirituality, where they said that, you know what, the body of the person is not the whole story of the person. If you, this author, Chimamanda Adichie, a Nigerian author, she talked about what they call the single story. I think we looked at that in semester 1. So the single story narrative. So saying that whenever you see someone, the person does not just contain a single story where that defines everything in their life. There's usually many aspects to it. So it becomes very important to then look at the ways in which we as scholars help bring out these stories about African ways of views of disability. Very, very important. Part of the big challenge we have is that a lot of the knowledge we have in Africa has not been documented, has not been, so there's no way for us to know about it. And what we cannot read and understand, it doesn't exist in people's mind. So that's part of, as we go ahead as scholars, understanding disability, understanding the Western way and everything, we have to document it. But Unati also mentioned something very critical. Decolonization doesn't mean throwing away Western knowledge. I always say we will be shooting ourselves in the foot, because it's about taking what is valuable from our context there and then showing how it is valuable. And yeah, the documentation, what I want to say, and what I want to add to what Unato was saying is that what Dr. Carissa said, that all knowledge has bias. There's no knowledge that is perfect. I say, oh, it doesn't come from a certain context. No, all knowledge has bias, has a way of seeing things, has a way of valuing things. You know, that's very, very important. Yeah, and lastly, I want to say something. If you remember from semester one, Professor Watermeyer spoke about. If you notice a common thread that runs through, you know, when you talk about medical model view, disability, seen as people with disability seen as, oh, they're not full humans. They don't, you know, so they are devalued. If you think about race, you know, people that are black seen as not full human, devalued. You think about feminist, you know, gender, women seen as weaker. You know, you see that common thread that runs whereby people view certain ways of knowing certain people as the ultimate, and then others are devalued. So there's a common thread that runs through when you talk about intersectionality, you talk about identities, you know, and things like that. So to be aware of that, yeah. Masabata, I think you had your hand up. Do you still want to contribute, or
I
you're fine?
think I'm covered, Doctor. It's just when
Okay.
Unati mentioned the views that she just shared, the last ones, my mind rushed quickly to the development space, where we are saying when we come with interventions, we need to consider the indigenous knowledge. Now, that's what came to my mind immediately when she mentioned that. But also, I went back to what Mbali said the other day with regard to the issue of change and whether I would say teachers for now, are they ready to grasp this new ways of doing things? So it just quickly went between those two spaces. Yeah, but I don't have maybe a better way of suggesting something different. I do agree with her that those are the things that we need to take into consideration. I remember in one of the scenarios that was shared with the development studies was when government officials would come to the area and come up with new ways of doing things, and the community would not accept those. For instance, the issue of introducing electricity, and they would say electricity is making our cows not to give birth, with the lack of a better term. So things like those. Hence, I'm saying yes, we need to consider those indigenous knowledge.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely. They need to be considered, but like we said, you know, and that's what Amani is saying and what Unati is saying. There is two sides to this coin, you know. We're kind of, the narrative is kind of warning of the idealization of our indigenous knowledge system. So thinking that it's perfect, that, oh, there's nothing we need to change anymore, that is very wrong. That would be very wrong. You know, the way I see it, every culture has a strength and an area to improve upon. I won't call it bad or weakness, but an area to improve upon. And every culture has that. And I think that's the mistake colonizers made. They saying that, okay, their way of knowing and being doesn't have any area to improve upon. It's perfect. And so therefore everybody should adopt it. So it's the same way when we look at the theories we're dealing with, even UDL, you know, even a man is critiquing UDL in terms of its application in African context. So even UDL, look at, okay, what areas is it, what dimensions is it missing from within our context? And for us to propose those dimensions and not to wait for others to come and propose it for us to propose those changes that will help. Yeah. Okay, so we have the best way to use this time now, because the second part of the video is about 44 minutes. So definitely we won't be able to finish with that for this session. Let me just go. So let me let me use this part then to just talk around the rest of what needs to happen this week. Okay. So we had finished the first part. These are those materials which Dr. Danton spoke about, so you can go through them to get, if you want to dive deeper into UDL. Okay. This is a lecture, then just a reflection. This one is where you reflect on the differences between UDL, universal design and universal design for learning. Okay, the first lecture. Then I think we'll go through this when we come in on Thursday. That's the first thing we'll do. We'll complete this because we have an hour, 30 minutes. So we'll use the first hour to complete this and just have any discussions around it. Okay, is where she goes into practical applications. Okay, so we'll go through that. And then this is an article she wrote, connected flaws. Read through that. And then with that article, you just write a little bit information, around, what is relevant to you. Okay. Did they highlight frameworks? The framework you highlighted, is it aware? Are you aware of it? What's relevant to you? And what are aspects that you want to keep in mind as you go forward with UDL implementation? Okay, so you just do the reflection there. Then you just go through. This video is about this lady. She's trying to give a differentiation between curriculum differentiation and universal design for learning. Now, sometimes it is used interchangeably, but they actually complement each other. Yeah, they actually complement each other, and in that way they're also different. Okay. And then here, this video just, gives a simpler breakdown of, how to approach UDL, always thinking about the goal. What do you want to achieve with your students? And then seeing how UDL can help, achieve that. And then you do reflection on that. So we've already gone through this, decoloniality. Okay. And then there are some articles from Carissa, from Judy, Mackenzie, and Devili. So you read through that and then you reflect on them. When you reflect on them, you try and respond to these 3 questions. So you explore the links between their arguments and the reading in the screencast. So that means in the Amani screencast, the video we just watched, critique the recommendations given by Carissa in the article, and identify values from your community that are relevant to the pursuit of education for children with disabilities. So now here you are tapping into your own context and bringing that in. Okay. So then there's this article by Mnyolo, Interview 2017. It will form part of the online activity which you're going to engage with. So on Thursday, like I said, we come in, we will finish off with the second part of Dr. Tanton's lecture, and then the second part, Amani will come in, and then, so from what we discussed today, that's why I wanted us to discuss the decoloniality. Go through it more, do the readings, and what are areas you would like more clarification on? And what are questions that you have? Okay. This time I won't say to send it to me. I'm thinking, you know what? Actually do that because it helps with time. So let's do the same thing we did last week. Compile your questions or area of clarification and send it to Affiliate, the class rep, so that they can send it to me. So what we'll do when we come to that second part on Thursday, just in order to help with time, I will pose some of those questions to him, and then he can answer them faster. And then if you now have any other questions that came up, you can then follow up if we have more time. Okay. So by the Wednesday, tomorrow evening, or latest Thursday morning, okay, Thursday morning before noon, I should have those questions, okay, or areas of classification. Then the online activity you have this week, this is the 3rd, right? Yeah, this is the 3rd. Online activity you have for this week is, after reading these 2 articles, the article by Nolo and Walton, you are to just write about how you understand decoloniality in disability and education. Okay. And then when you're writing about it, discuss this and give us a summary of your thoughts. This time, we want you to either do a podcast or something else. So we don't want just not to post in the forum or to put in a Word document. Here, we want you to use a different medium of your choosing. So it can be a podcast is audio, narration. So where you record your thoughts auditory, and then you post it as a recording. Okay. So either it's a podcast, if you want to do a narrated PowerPoint, up to you. If you want to do a video, up to you. Anything you want to do that helps you express, your thoughts, please do that. And then you post it to the discussion forum. Okay. And then lastly, reflecting on those textbooks chapters in the beginning, as these ones, the overview, Universal Design for Learning Basics, and Decoloniality, reflecting on those in this Padlet. When you finish reading them, what do you think would work in your setting? So you see here now, this session, we're trying to actually tap into our ways of knowing and being. And don't get frustrated if you don't know much about it, because like Onati and I noted, we've not been documenting these things in our settings, but we do know them from experience, from when we grew up, what we do, how when we went to school, all those things. So what do you think will work in your setting? What are some of the gaps you would like to know more about from what you read from the textbook chapters? Then, given where we came from, what additional information can we suggest for the textbook? The textbook is not perfect. So what can we say, you know what, this would be a good addition to the textbook because of, these ways of knowledge or these ways of skills or attitudes and the rest of it. So you then post it in the reflection. Yeah. So that is what is the information or the engagements that we have for you to engage with this week. Any comments, questions? Okay. If there are no comments or questions, we are actually allowed to end earlier. We don't have to always go, because we always go over time. So maybe today we'll actually end earlier, giving you more time. Okay. So we end earlier. It gives you more time to go maybe sort out what you need to sort out chores so that you can have more time to deal with your coursework. Okay. So it's not giving you to go, and I don't think any of you will actually go and party. I don't think you actually have that time. But you never know. We're all different. You never know. We're all different. But yeah. So if no questions,
they can read one or two from the readings that they have, or maybe watch a video.
Exactly. So there are many videos which you've not watched. Even you can use it to catch up on one or two things you couldn't complete last week. Okay. All right. So
Cedric doesn't think so. He just wants to rest.
Rest is important.
Exhaustion. But yeah.
Look, I know what people are saying, are going through, because like I said, I'm doing a second master's and we have classes Wednesday. So tomorrow I have class and Friday I have class. And each week we have to submit a critical reflection. So like an online activity. Yeah, each week I have to submit a critical. So these things I'm telling you, I'm practicing it. I'm practicing. If not, you'll be able to meet up. Yeah, you'll be able to meet up. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And yeah, we'll see you on Thursday. So please send those questions so that we receive it by Thursday noon latest. Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening. Okay.
Enjoy your evening.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Masabata, do you want? Oh,
Masabata, do you have a question?
I'm still here, Onati.
Okay.
I see your hand. I thought you had a question.
No, it's I think a legacy one, or I didn't even notice.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay. Bye.